Hey, good afternoon to you. 407 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, David Strom from Hot Air will join us at 4:30. And then president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, is here at 5:30. He'll cut through so much of the nonsense you've been hearing. Maybe not you, but certainly lefties have been hearing from their deranged outlets about Project 2025. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Okay, so there's an all-out panic going on the left about Joe Biden's status at the top of the ticket. It's not because Joe Biden has dementia or Parkinson's or anything else. It's because he's trailing in the polls. That's the primary concern. And those surveys increasingly are showing what some political observers, I saw Josh Krausher say, we're heading into Trump landslide territory, which would be amazing if that actually occurred. For more on what's actually going down right now in all of this polling, let's bring in Sarah Bedford. She's an investigations editor for the Washington Examiner and joins us on the phone to discuss the state of this race. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So how big was the debate in dictating the sentiment of the American voter?
I think it's overstating it a little to say that this is what made voters concerned about Joe Biden's fitness for office.
Yes.
Or worried about the economy. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump was winning, albeit by a lot less in the polls before the debate. And so it's kind of ironic that Biden says the elites are trying to force him out. The elites were last to the party to notice that Joe Biden is too old to do this job and, hasn't actually done that well as president besides the age question.
Yes.
The debate, though, I think really cemented that for people who weren't necessarily paying attention before.
Yeah, the polling on Joe Biden's cognition and the way voters felt about him has been pretty clear, you're right, for a while. In fact, it formed the basis of James Rosen's question now over 2 years ago, directly to Joe Biden, about so many voters think that he is not of sound enough mind to be president of the United States. What does he say to them? So in other words, this question has been lingering for a very long time, except the media have, for the most part, not wanted to deal with it.
Right. I mean, the media and the Democrats who are now speaking out about hoping Joe Biden quickly demonstrates a more energetic candidate, I mean, they have been dismissive of the concerns of their constituents and their voters until the debate made this a problem they could no longer ignore. And now, like you mentioned, Josh Krausher was saying before, you're headed into a situation where Donald Trump's path to 270 is completely clear, and potentially we're looking at an electoral college victory that could be well beyond what he was able to achieve in 2016.
I saw some claims today that even New York State is getting into the territory where it may be up for grabs, which is, if that's true, there's no chance this is anything but a Trump landslide come November. As you look at the national picture, how are the winds moving in Trump's direction right now?
Well, if you think about what a path to 270 needs to look like for Donald Trump, he has to obviously win all the states that he won in 2020. And then, the most plausible path from there, the conventional wisdom goes, would be for him to win Arizona and Georgia, both of which were very close in 2020. And in both of those states, he's pulled away significantly in polling. He's pulling outside the margin of error above Joe Biden at this point. And if he does that, he only needs to win one state in the Midwest of the Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. He can lose two of those at that point and still win the presidency, but he's pulling ahead in all three of those states. And even in some states that Republicans haven't dreamed of winning in a presidential in decades. So, when you put together those numbers, I mean, Joe Biden can't be down by more than, 4 or 5 points in every single swing state and have any kind of realistic expectation of reelection.
Yeah. And the left's operation to hustle for ballots and get them in early is one of the key ways that they try and take these things to get these elections over with. Early voting starting imminently in a bunch of states, and the left is under immense pressure right now to figure out who's going to be at the top of the ticket. When you look at this, how soon do they have to resolve who the nominee is going to be?
in just a matter of weeks. I mean, remember that Ohio has a ballot access deadline the first week of August, which means that even before the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Democrats were going to have a virtual roll call to make sure that Joe Biden was formally nominated so that they could get him on the ballot in Ohio. And, there's been talk about having that virtual roll call even earlier than the first week of August, potentially in late July. Now we're in mid-July, you might say. So the time is really running out for Democrats who want to replace him. And I'm personally skeptical, and none of us can make a prediction. None of us have ever seen anything like this before, but personally skeptical that it's going to happen at this point, just because if there was going to be a moment to have that reckoning, it was when Democrats had maximum leverage right after that debate. I mean, barring any other unforeseen major debacles from Joe Biden, if he manages to string together passable interviews and appearances, I think that Democrats who haven't found their courage by now probably aren't going to.
I'm not even sure precisely what the strategy is for out of the White House. Clearly Biden wants to stay. And more so, it seems, the family members around him want him to stay. Jill and Hunter and his sister Valerie, they're all reportedly pushing really hard to keep him in place. They keep doing public events with him every so often, and those tend to be nothing more than sustainers for the Democrat panic that we're seeing. Sarah, we're getting a press conference tomorrow, Thursday, with Joe Biden in front of a press that has suddenly turned hostile as they look to replace him. And then on Monday, it was just announced he's supposed to get a Lester Holt primetime interview on NBC, where he's once again, just as the Republican convention is starting, going to be doing a public exposition of his ability to speak. What is the strategy as you understand it?
Well, those have to go well, right? The stakes for every single public appearance, even just walking from the motorcade to the Air Force One, is enormous for Joe Biden right now. I think the strategy for the White House is to have these events where Joe Biden pulls out a decent performance, and it can kind of be demonstrated that he's fine for now. I think the press conference will be the most interesting to watch, just because even though this is a White House that pre-selects the reporters they're going to call on, and we've seen that before, even pre-screens the questions, and in this sort of bilateral format with foreign leaders that we see normally keeps the press conferences pretty short, the level of control that the White House exerts over the press conference, which doesn't normally get mentioned by the mainstream media reporters who benefit from that, I think will come under a lot of scrutiny as well. Because so far, all we've seen after the debate is highly scripted, highly controlled events to try to prove that Joe Biden is with it. And that's not enough for normal voters. Maybe it's enough to calm Democrats. It's not enough for normal voters.
No. And the most infamous example in the wake of that debate was that radio host in Philadelphia who accepted scripted questions from the White House, turns around, asks them of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is incapable of even answering them coherently, suggesting at one point that he was the first black woman to work for a black president. And she got fired. She got fired as the station became embarrassed by the way the interview was set up and the way she conducted herself by asking the questions the White House wrote for her.
That's right. And I mean, in the George Stephanopoulos interview, which one could argue didn't go super well for Joe Biden, George Stephanopoulos kind of asked the same question over and over again for 22 minutes. Are you going to step down? And if not, why not? And he just rephrased it 15 different ways for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And so, he hasn't really faced those harsh questions or those unscripted moments since the debate. And it seems like the White House is trying to keep all of his appearances as low risk as possible.
Right. Now, that's to convince voters. Meanwhile, elected Democrats have been well aware of this problem for a while. In fact, as we look at the numbers for the House and the Senate, you're seeing Nancy Pelosi. If anything's an indication of how this is going, it's Nancy Pelosi going on TV saying, "Well, it's up to Joe," even though Joe said at the beginning of the week he's staying in the race. What does that tell you about the down ballot impact of all of this? What is likely to happen to both the House and the Senate this year at this rate?
At this rate, I mean, some of the candidates in the Senate candidates in swing states or even in red states like Montana and Ohio were outpolling Joe Biden, which suggests Democrats don't have a Democrat problem. They have a Joe Biden problem, right? But there's no, the drag that a Joe Biden loss of the magnitude that the polls are suggesting right now there's no candidate that will be able to overcome a drag that big. And so I think you will start to see a lot of if Joe Biden stays, you'll start to see a lot of the big money probably shift towards those down ballot races to try to staunch some of the bleeding. But the map is being expanded for Republicans because of this opportunity in some pretty crazy ways. I mean, Maryland, the Senate race, is pretty looking good for Republicans right now. Those are the sorts of pickups that you would see if the Donald Trump victory is that big, and he will definitely have some coattails in that case.
I saw Ed Morrissey over at Hot Air right this week, and I'm going to talk to David Strom here in a few minutes too. But one of the things he pointed out is, Biden is now insisting, and he insisted in that Morning Joe interview on Monday, Sarah Bedford, that, hey, he's here, and if you don't like it, tough. Like, try and run against me. I'm not going anywhere. And Ed Morrissey is saying Biden is running basically at this point on a program of mutually assured destruction. If Democrats are going to keep carping about Joe Biden being at the top of the ticket, they're all going to go down together. So Biden is essentially threatening his own party with, I'm staying, so either shut up or we're all going to lose together.
I've seen it described as Trumpian, this attitude that Joe Biden has. And it just exposes the lie at the heart of so much of the Democratic messaging about Donald Trump. Because if you want to talk about, fealty to one man, look at the fact that only 8 Democrats in the House have come out and publicly called for Joe Biden to step down when he's manifestly not fit to hold office. You saw far more Republicans come out and demand Donald Trump step off the ticket when it was later in the game and more costly in 2016 after the Access Hollywood tape. And Joe Biden has kind of built his own cult of personality up as the savior of the Democratic Party the way Trump does. And the anti-democratic message at the heart of get over it, this is a person in power, I think really undercuts the savior of democracy message that Joe Biden was pushing.
Yeah, it really is amazing to watch. Let's see. Sarah Bedford, thank you as always from the Washington Examiner. Really good to have you with us today. Oh, it's funny. I see Guy Benson on Twitter pointing out that I think this is a CNN chyron. Biden aides to CNN. Discussion is over. Biden is running. Oh, this is the best. Isn't this the best? They're going to have to use the jaws of life to get that guy out of the Oval Office. So the left is staging an insurrection right now, trying to get rid of the President of the United States. At this very moment, he's refusing to leave. So that's a fun story to cover. Senator Michael Bennett, Democrat, was on CNN last night, and he says Biden can't win. He became the first senator to say it out loud on television.
Dana Bash reported that you, Senator John Tester, and Senator Sherrod Brown all said during that lunch that you don't think President Biden can win in 2024. Is that true?
Well, it's true that I said that, and I did say that behind closed doors, and you guys and others asked whether I had said it, and that is what I said. So I figured I should come here and say it publicly.
That's like a cringe answer. You asked what I said, and I said what I said, and therefore I'm saying it again so you can hear what I said.
Why do you think he can't win in November?
I just think this race is on a trajectory that is very worrisome if you care about the future of this country. Joe Biden was
not that worrisome, actually. It's going great if you care about the future of the country.
9 points up at this time. The last time he was running, Hillary Clinton was 5 points up. This is the first time.
She wanted to be 50 points ahead. She didn't understand that.
In more than 20 years that a Republican president has been up in this part of the campaign. Donald Trump is on track, I think, to win this election and maybe win it by a landslide and take with him the Senate and the House. And so for me, this isn't a question about polling. It's not a question about politics. It's a moral question about the future of our country. And I think it's critically important for us to come to grips with what we face if together we put this country on the path of electing Donald Trump again.
Democrat Senator Dick Blumenthal now saying he's very concerned about Joe.
I am deeply concerned about Joe Biden winning this November.
For you Virginians out there, Tim Kaine has some thoughts on this, too.
I have complete confidence that Joe Biden will do the patriotic thing for the country.
Isn't that a fun sentence? It starts with it's what sounds like an endorsement of Joe Biden, and by the end of it, it's he needs to go.
I have complete confidence that Joe Biden will do the patriotic thing for the country, and he's going to make that decision. He's never disappointed me. He's always put
He announced at the beginning of the week that he's not going anywhere.
patriotism and the country ahead of himself, and I'm going to respect the decision that he made.
The old Nancy Pelosi approach. Oh, he'll make a decision. He already made a decision. Sure. Okay, he'll make a decision. John Hinkenlooper here as well.
Do you think President Biden can win in 2024?
You know, I'm holding off on that whole discussion. Let's get NATO
Just tapping
done.
out.
I mean, are you waiting to see his performance at the press conference tomorrow to make a decision?
Well, I'm watching, but I'm going to hold off on having the discussion.
Okay, so you're not willing to say either way whether you think President Biden should be the nominee?
Nobody's told me what to say
Well,
yet.
I'm not willing to say to you, but I am willing to say.
Well, when are you going to speak up with that?
Again, when the time's right.
I'm not going to tell you, he says to the reporter. I'll tell somebody. I'm not going to tell you. So things are going well. Things are going really well. You know, for normal people. As the party of chaos consumes itself. I love AOC. AOC is out saying, we're going with Joe. And Nancy Pelosi is out saying, I'm not so sure about that. Could you have predicted this? It's a chaotic party. You don't have to predict all of it. Coming up, David Strom will be with us from Hot Air as the left is trying to figure out what they're going to do next. It's good. Hopefully they keep concentrating the damage on each other. It gives them a break from hurting us. Hey, good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation will join us at 5:30 to address all of the left's fear-mongering about Project 2025. Pretty funny. It's like the right puts together a list of some policy proposals. So like, here's some things you might want to consider. And the left says, well, that's evil. You're not supposed to actually have plans. We'll talk about that and so much more. We'll chat with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi doesn't care that Joe Biden said earlier this week that he's absolutely staying in this race. He made his decision. Nancy Pelosi pretends he hasn't.
Does he have your support to be the head of the Democratic ticket?
As long as the president it's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. I think overwhelming support of the caucus. It's not for me to say. I'm not the head of the caucus anymore, but he's beloved. He is respected, and people want him to make that decision, not me.
He has said he has made the decision. He has said firmly this week he is going to run. Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do, and that's the way it is. Whatever he decides, we go with.
Yeah, he's got to make his decision. All right, let's bring in David Strom. He's the associate editor at Hot Air, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, David.
I am having so much fun with this news cycle. If Joe Biden did not have his finger on the nuclear button, I would be, just in seventh heaven.
Yes, this would be so much better if it was a cost-free scenario. If this was just like some couple on The Bachelor that everybody was discussing. But that's not what's happening here. Obviously, you're very right. There's a lot on the line when it comes to who's in the Oval Office. But boy, in terms of political parties this could happen to, I feel like it couldn't happen to a better group.
Oh, my gosh. The war that is going on right now is just hilarious. I don't know whether you've seen it or gotten the audio, but I just saw that Chuck Todd is now taking personal shots at the president. And so, everybody is pirouetting. They're going in between, he's sharp and he's in it to win it, to the guy is senile, he's got Parkinson's, he's actually a very bad man. And it's just going to go on and on.
This audio that David's referring to, I do feel like it bears repeating. Chuck Todd has a podcast. He calls it the Toddcast, right? That's the clever name that came up with it for it. And on the Toddcast today, he says two things that are of note. One is that a cabinet secretary told him 2 years ago that Joe Biden is too cognitively impaired to run for president again.
Jonathan, I'm not going to out the cabinet secretary.
Right.
But I had a cabinet secretary 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay. 2 years ago. All out of the blue, ask me, do you really think he can't run again like this? And I said, well, you have more interaction with him than I do. And they said, I don't have a lot of interaction with him.
Chuck Todd. So that's 2 years ago. He said he was warned by this cabinet secretary that Biden is not with it enough to run. And then Chuck Todd says, all of this is making me rethink Biden's biography. I actually think he may be a bad person now.
It has made me want to rethink a lot of the Biden biography. I still can't believe he ran for president in the first place, given that his family was in crisis in 2018. You look at what has happened. I can't believe he put his family through this. And now looking at his behavior now in clinging to this, I think the entire narrative on Joe Biden is going to change, in that everything has been about his ambition, and his ambition comes first.
He's just so selfish. I can't believe I didn't see it before, says Chuck Todd.
Let's see. Chuck Todd, a cabinet member, tells him 2 years ago that the guy has got pudding for brains, and Chuck Todd is sitting there with his MSNBC colleagues talking about how sharp as a tack the guy is. And now they want to get rid of him, and we're about to get this, data dump of stuff that they've known all along. Joe Biden has never been a good person. Everyone knew that. They've just been feeding us a line of BS. It's all their narrative. And, what's going to come out in this civil war among the Democrats is just everybody dumping their Oppo research. Yes. And it's going to be glorious.
How much Oppo do you think Kamala Harris is dumping behind the scenes right now? Because we're getting a lot of headlines, aren't we? And from people who are on the inside, they worked in the White House. They're leaking things like the over-the-top preparation they have to do just to get Joe Biden to walk across the stage. Do you think that's all coming from Kamala's people, to the extent she has any?
Oh, I think some of it certainly is, although she's not a well-loved person in the White House either. I mean, everyone who works for her winds up leaving pretty quickly. But, yeah, she definitely wants the job. And I think she doesn't want to just be the candidate. She wants to be the president of the United States, because she's just the candidate. She's going to lose. She needs to be the incumbent. That way she'll be the first black woman president, and with a better chance of winning than it's just the second-tier vice president on the ticket there as a cheap substitute. For the failing old man. So she's definitely in on it.
Yeah.
I think some of the Obama people are in on it. Obama has never liked this guy. And if you look at the people who started sounding the alarm months ago, they're Obama people.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Obama people. So in the wake of the debate, David Plouffe, Obama's original campaign manager, was on TV with Rachel Maddow, and he said this is a DEFCON 1 moment. Former Obama staffer Tommy Vietor has been out saying that Joe Biden needs to get out of this race. He respects people who think differently, but he thinks Biden needs to get out. Additionally, Obama speechwriter John Favreau was on TV again today saying that Biden needs to get out. David Axelrod has now said multiple times, both in rich media as well as in print media, that Biden needs to get out of this race for the good of the country. And then we get George Clooney today, David Strom, who is Barack Obama's favorite Hollywood friend. They spend a lot of time together in Italy doing all these boat trips together. And George Clooney comes out today and writes a New York Times op-ed saying Biden has to go. He saw him up close and personal at that fundraiser just a few weeks ago in L.A., and he said Biden was a disaster there. What do you make of all of that?
Oh, well, they are engaged in what my colleague Ed Morrissey called mutual assured destruction. And we're seeing the levels of escalation, and everybody's escalating closer to dropping the nuke. It's clear that Obama wants him out. And Biden is basically saying, well, I've got Oppo research on you, and I'm sitting here on top of $250 million and all the rules in my favor, and they're playing a game of chicken. I just think it's just bizarre. I mean, the big problem is that Joe Biden is a bad man.
Yeah.
He is not going, he's not thinking about the good of the country or his party or anything else. So it's going to be a big food fight.
A lot of this has been lefties coming to the realization, or at least being willing to admit the things the right has been saying out loud for years about Biden. Certainly about the state of his cognition, for sure. Now you have Chuck Todd saying, oh, Biden is a selfish person. It turns out if I look backwards and say he's always been in it for himself, he's not really doing this for the country. How far are we from Obama people leaking the true nature of the Biden business arrangements overseas, and then the media sharing it with the rest of us as a means of getting him out of office?
Well, in fact, I just predicted that was the next step in an article that's coming up. And I don't think we can ignore the fact that the mainstream media has a huge problem on their hands because of what Chuck Todd just said. He knew. He had been told, and he hadn't said anything. Let me relate something that happened with a family member. Big Dem, big lib. He and I argue politics a lot because we both enjoy it. And he sent me an email 2 days ago saying, you have been bugging me about the lies of the mainstream media and that I shouldn't trust them. And I thought you were wrong. And now I know you were right. So, I mean, they've got a huge credibility problem, which is also why they're trying to take Joe Biden out, because, they're going to throw him under the bus to try to save themselves.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's like this three-way war that's going on. And I think the press is trying to align with Obama because they see him as still the future of the party, his people. And, Biden is done. He's dead. So, metaphorically.
I know. You have to offer that caveat because of his health situation. I get it. Hey, on the press, have you noticed how hostile they've suddenly become towards the White House? It's just at a drop of a hat. Now they're going after Karine Jean-Pierre. She is not in any way equipped to handle this. She, in the past, if she would get a question she didn't like from, say, a conservative reporter in that room, on the rare occasion that they got a chance to say anything, she would attack them. She would moralize about how awful they are. She would treat them like garbage. And then the rest of the press in the room would nod their heads solemnly and go along with whatever she said about those people. But now that it's members of the mainstream corporate left-wing press who are giving her grief for her lies, which, by the way, she keeps telling with each passing day, she looks totally like a deer caught in the headlights. She has no idea how to handle this at all, and she's upset. She feels personally attacked. I thought you were my friend.
Yes. Oh, it really is just amazing. I mean, the press has decided that Biden has to go. Everyone around Biden has to be thrown to the bus because their only defense is we were lied to. I mean, that's their solution to the problem of covering up for Biden. We were just telling you what we were told. All our sources said this, and we were lied to. And Karine Jean-Pierre is in that crowd. They are going to sacrifice her. I mean, she's going to be one of the many human sacrifices to the gods of credibility.
Yes.
And, just to give you two more data points. One, NBC on their NBC Now channel that's broadcast over the internet interviewed a Parkinson's doctor, and he's just saying it's Parkinson's. All right, so they brought on someone to tell you that Joe Biden's brain is pudding.
Yes.
With expert credentials. And the other thing, let me give a plug for Heather McDonald at City Journal.
Yeah.
She's pointing out that the New York Times is now fact-checking Joe Biden, and they're printing his verbal flubs verbatim.
And today, the George Clooney op-ed, I think it represents at least, and it's got to be a lot more than this, at least the third New York Times op-ed calling for Joe Biden to step down. There have been 2 official New York Times editorials from their editorial board doing that very thing. Now we have the George Clooney op-ed. I'm sure many of their other columnists have been doing that as well. And David, you remember the Obama era. The New York Times really kind of walks in lockstep with Obama world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he is their Black Jesus. And you can see why. I mean, he's the perfect representation of that class. He looks good. He sounds good. He's got that very Ivy League way of
demeanor,
presenting himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, if he were not a politician, you would probably love him too. I mean, he's just very appealing until you realize that he's a communist. But he could have been one of my colleagues, when I was a college professor, only much better than most of them because he just is so smooth. Yeah, I mean, the New York Times has flipped. They even debunked the bleach hoax. Remember Trump wants you to inject bleach?
Yes.
Hoax? Well, which they pushed back in 2020. They were on that train, but they actually fact-checked Joe Biden and said, well, this isn't true at all. Trump didn't say that. Here's what he was really talking about. It's like they're defending Donald Trump.
All in an effort to get rid of Joe. It is amazing. Yeah. It's amazing the resources that the left can marshal on a moment's notice to achieve its goals. And what's even funnier is that Hunter Biden is holding them all off for now. It really is amazing. It's just amazing. Hey, David Strom, thank you very much. Good to talk to you as always.
Always fun. Thanks, Vince.
The great David Strom over at Hot Air. It's like a 3-man effort. It's Valerie, it's Jill, and it's Hunter. Once again, scheming and winning. They have a track record. It's 4:51 now. James calling in from Huntsville, Alabama, now on line 2. James, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Calling in on the WMAL app. I really enjoy that.
Thank you for that.
I think the press is getting off way too easy from Republicans and conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Todd just about swerved into it. They knew 5 years ago that there were going to be issues.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the Republican Party never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity. It's a great opportunity for them to just pose the rhetorical, what else are they hiding from you? They do this, what else do they know?
Yes.
And just thoroughly discredit them.
And and your point's well taken. They're willing to lie about the most obvious things, aren't they, James?
Right. So anyway, and your hot air guy covered a lot of great ground.
Mm-hmm.
One point I've been trying to make online is Joe Biden has a lot of information on the party too, and he has no allegiances to anybody but himself, he and Jill, and so they got to tread carefully. I think he's more than willing to do a data dump on the party and just blow it all up.
Yeah, or at least the people around him who have sound mind. So there's a couple of these guys. A lot of these guys have loaded guns, metaphorically, and they're discharging them against each other as we speak, and things could get worse. But in the end, if it results in some transparency, that'd be nice, wouldn't it, James?
Every day.
Every day. Thanks, man. James, also, in the note Corey took down for his call, he mentioned apparently that we knew this in 2020 because Biden ran a basement campaign. It's the only reason he could plausibly claim that he won the campaign strategically. And, do you remember that? He was holding up a photo of his family at one point. All of his talking points were being reflected off the glass of the photo back at the guy who was interviewing him. Even then, we knew it was all a scam. And the press, they're acting like they just found it out.